thank you all for attending today's panel. My name is Fahd Gulzar, and I've had the opportunity to work with a number of different public sector customers to build collaborations which are geared towards workforce development. Today's panel is titled Digital Training for the Government Workforce. But in reality, this is more than just about training. It's about a transformation across the Government of Canada. In February 2022, the Canada School of Public Service implemented Brightspace Learning Management System across the Government of Canada. For those of you who don't know, Brightspace is a product built by D2L, which is an education technology company. And for those of you who don't know, D2L runs its entire infrastructure on Amazon Web Services. As we say here at Amazon Web Services, it's all in on AWS. During this panel, we're going to focus on learning from CSPS, the Canada School of Public Service, and D2L on the way training is brought to the government, this new way that the training is brought to the Government of Canada. We're going to talk about some of the culture changes that needed to be in place before and after this transformation. And lastly, we're going to talk about some of the obstacles that were in place, removed, or that had to be dealt with before the transformation was put in place. Now let's get started. With that, I'd like to introduce my panelists for today. We have Taiki Sarantakis from the Canada School of Public Service, the president of the Canada School of Public Service, and we have Nick Otson, the Chief Technology Officer of D2L. Thank you both very much for being here today with me and all of us. Now, I think we'd like to get to know you a little bit better. So Taiki, why don't we start with you? Sure. Tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us about your organization, and tell us about your organization's mandate.
Sure, thanks so much, Fahd. So it's a real pleasure to be here today to talk about the cloud and SaaS and learning and technology and how all those things can interact. So as you mentioned, I'm the president of the Canada School of Public Service, and the Canada School of Public Service is kind of the in-house learning and training entity for the Government of Canada. And our reach is about 300,000 employees, about 300,000 people work at the Canada School of Public Service, and they do so across all 10 provinces, all 3 territories, across all our time zones in both official languages. And in fact, we also service public servants abroad. We regularly get our colleagues from global affairs or citizenship, immigration, refugee, and citizenship tuning into our events and taking our courses. So for us, it's absolutely critical to have a platform that's modern, that's scalable, and that is able to have reach, not only across Canada, but globally. And I really look forward to kind of getting into some of those issues.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you, Taiki. Now, Nick, over to you. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself, about your organization's mandate, and if you could also tell us about generally, who are your primary customers?
Sure, absolutely. So I represent D2L. D2L's been in existence for about 21 years. And so, again, started as a project of our CEO to think about how learning happens online, especially for continuing education and distance education, and it's ballooned since then. So we spend a lot of time thinking about learning, and when we think about learning, we definitely try and think about what are the learning moments that matter. And how do we make learning engaging and exciting, especially in this day and age when the modality of where you might be learning, you might be on a bus, you might be wherever you happen to be, you have to consider it. So we've spent a lot of time working on our innovations in our learning platform to try and enable that across a whole bunch of different sort of needs globally. So we serve kindergarten through grade 12, right? Which if you have kids, they might be using our platform depending on where in the world they are, especially in Ontario. And we serve higher education, colleges, universities, trade schools around the world. And we also do corporate learning, so same kind of thing where people are looking at, how do I do leadership development programs, or how do I make sure that learning is part of our employees' career paths, because that's the way they want to extend their support for developing their skills.
Excellent. And so generally you mentioned your customers are, you said K to 12, but universities, colleges, right? Generally that's your typical
Wherever
customer.
learning happens, that's where we are.
Okay. And I think this is why this story is so unique. It's because when you think of desire to learn, D2L's typical customer, you think of the universities, the colleges, the schools, the traditional schools where you can go get a diploma or a degree or certificate. Perfect. All right, well, thank you both for those introductions. So generally government of Canada or government are not necessarily, they don't come top of mind when you think of innovation. They're getting better at it, but I mean, just frankly speaking so. So Taiki, I want to hear from you about an organization that wasn't known for innovation in the past. How did you get them ready for such a large change? Because this is transformational. You mentioned 300,000 people have the potential to use this system. So
not only have the potential, but we have about 250,000 people have already signed up, and our daily average is almost 10,000 people a day.
Wow.
So this is something that is in the field now. It's in the market, so to speak, for all Canadian public servants, and it has been for the last 6 months. I want to take your question and kind of go back a moment or two and maybe make a couple of points. So the first is you talked about innovation and how governments aren't necessarily known to be innovative. And that's absolutely true, but there's a good reason for that. Governments historically are late adopters because governments don't, outside of kind of the security world, governments don't like to onboard things that don't have a proven track record, that they don't want to kind of flip a switch for their citizens. And, like Obamacare, where, you're supposed to sign up 300,000 Americans an hour, where, I think 4 people signed up apparently during the course of that thing. So there are very good reasons why government is a late adopter. That said, government is now, and not just the Canadian government, but governments around the world, are having challenges because the technological pace of advancement right now is just greatly outstripping government's capacity to react. And so it's really, really critical that governments around the world start adopting modern tools like cloud, like SaaS, like AI, like data, like robotic process automation, because if we don't, citizens are, not only will they not be well served, but citizens also will start to kind of question a little bit of the legitimacy of government, because we're not a patient species anymore. Do you remember in the old days, kind of when you would go on the internet and you'd get this little thing and it would circle and you'd kind of go, yeah, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. We would wait. Now if it circles, you're like, what the heck is that? I have no patience for this. So if you interact with government and nobody's answering your phone, or the system's down, etc., there are issues. Now coming to the second part of your question, which is kind of how did you move the organization? For me, it was pretty simple. We are a learning organization, and we're a learning organization that can't do scale in a classroom. We can't bring in 300,000 people to our building down the street at LaSalle from around the world. So we need to kind of touch them digitally. And it was very clear to me when I took over the organization 4 years ago that we would kind of succeed or fail based on our capability, our infrastructure in the digital realm. And very, very thankfully, as I said, we replaced our old system with D2L, with Brightspace, and we'll talk about some of the benefits that that's meant for us and for our students in the Government of Canada.
Excellent, excellent. And I just want to come back to a number that you mentioned. You said the potential to log over this is I found fascinating, these numbers. Over 300,000 people, potential access to it. there's about 250,000 people that are currently signed into this.
That already have an account.
And there's about
the
10,000 people accessing it on a daily basis.
Every day. And we did some checking just for this event.
Yeah.
It's been down a grand total. There's some debate. It might be
Up to.
For the last 6 months, it might have been down for 3 hours. That's the absolute maximum. And for those of you that work in the Government of Canada, that's like a good day for some systems, let alone 6 months. So the reliability has been, 99.9999999. Our previous system would go down with a lot of regularity. And our previous system actually wasn't that old. It was launched in 2014, and in Government of Canada terms, that's a modern system. Like a lot of our systems, believe it or not, are from the 70s and from the 60s. And so think of kind of what that means to be having those old systems. So we have done the first modern platform in the Government of Canada. And
Thank you, microphone.
oh, I'm so sorry. We have successfully implemented the first modern platform in the Government of Canada, and I'm sure that it will be the first of many.
Excellent. And so, it's clear, Nick, that, Taiki and team selected D2L as, the organization, and Bright.
We selected half of them. So PSPC selected the other half.
Okay.
We selected the technical requirements. So, but everything in Government of Canada, procurement-wise, is a partnership with the department and
Of
with
course.
PSPC.
Of course. So I guess leading to my question is that D2L Brightspace, the platform, or D2L as an organization, was very well positioned, is very well positioned in this digital economy. And I think, after the pandemic, the use case for your technology is just stronger and stronger. So what have you done to ensure that potential customers, see your platform as the go-to platform for learning management systems? Like, what makes it unique compared to some of the others?
Yeah, okay. So, well, obviously, to take us with the reliability, right, just so people have some context, this week is our biggest load week that we ever see. We have the most people using our system in this week because schools are starting all across Canada and things like this week.
So if you were Santa, this would be your Christmas.
It would be my Christmas. Yeah. And the fact that I'm here means that things are smooth, right? So that's, reliability is always sort of the foundation, to your point, right? And security and privacy and things like accessibility are always a key in importance. It's a mix of the technology, because I have an engineering team of 300 plus people that are always revising and improving it. But it's also some of the approach that was really fantastic partnership between our two organizations, because it really is, technology is part of the solution, but really understanding who's using your software and what they're trying to accomplish and what problems they need solved. That dialogue is something that we spend a lot of time on. We have entire design and usability teams that do research before we change product changes or introduce new products. We spend a lot of time talking to what do you want to do here? Because we don't necessarily presume that we know all the answers, right? And so I find that actually sort of sets us apart in a lot of ways. Not that the technology isn't exciting and stability is paramount, but that whole relationship and how we partner is how we make sure we're doing the right things always.
So maybe can I add to that a little
Absolutely,
bit?
please.
So, and I'm sorry, I'm fiddling with the mic here. But one of the things that was really, really important to us was that the system be intuitive. Whatever people used would not require training, would not require, throwing a manual over to them, would not require people sitting in a classroom in their HR divisions going, okay, here is how you sign up to do the training for your financial delegation or for your staffing delegation. And so it was really, really critical to us that the user interface be clean, be accessible, be intuitive, be simple, all the kind of the things that we expect in real life. And again, like when you go on like an Amazon website to order something, or you go on Google to search something, or you go on Facebook to talk to your grandmother, you're not going to do that. You're not going to read a manual before you do that. It has to be very simple, very clean, very intuitive. And as the government of Canada and other governments across the world start moving to platforms, those are the kind of experiences that you as Canadians should be expecting in the not too distant future when you're paying your taxes, when you're applying for your old age pension, when you're signing up your kid for school, when you unfortunately, if one of your parents passes away and you have to close their estate. All of those things are very time intensive in most governments around the world, virtually all governments around the world, because the technology is A, old, but B, the technology doesn't think of the user. It doesn't think of the person on the other end of the line. It thinks of the department. It thinks, well, Department X needs this, and Department Y needs that. So the Canadian or the American or the Mexican or the Greek or the Italian will put in those systems, that information, in their national systems.
Excellent. Great. I agree with you. It needs to be an easy process. I recently had some challenges signing up, my daughter and for looking at daycare options for my son actually. And but anyways, that's another
even
story.
In Ottawa, I don't know how many people, probably everybody in the audience lives in Ottawa. One of the stories in August, one of the big local stories, was that people couldn't register their kids for swim lessons because the system went down. The system could only handle, what was it, like 50 applications an hour or 100 applications at a time or something like that. In many ways, that's unacceptable in 2022. Like to have a city of 1 million people being held, hostage, so to speak, by a system that can only register 50 people at a time or 100 people at a time or whatever the case may be. That's, imagine again in your real life if you were like, you log on to Google to check something. It's like, well, sorry, there are already 100 people on the system. Or, you're about to use Netflix and you're like, oh, damn, 7 people are already on, so I lost my turn. Yeah. Or, like we've all had those experiences where we're hitting refresh, 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 refresh. And we still tolerate that in certain public services. I'm not sure the people behind us who are people who are going to be, your kids and my kids, I'm not sure they're going to be tolerating that.
No, definitely not.
Excellent. Now, getting back to the Brightspace implementation, we mentioned that it officially went live in February 2022. But there must have been iterations and phases. So I want to hear about how were the iterations, how many iterations, and also I'd like to hear about kind of the value or the benefit of the fact that Brightspace is built entirely on the cloud.
Yeah.
Like, how did that enable agility?
Yeah, well, I can certainly talk to that. And so, I think I was just checking some of our internal Slack channels and things like that. We collected everybody together in earnest and said, hey, this is the project that we're doing around Canada School, and that was in March of 2021, right? And then we said, okay, we need to be prepped for fall and this sort of time horizon. This is what we want to see. So we can do some testing at that point with your teams and work that. So we sort of looked in motion and we did a huge gap analysis as you would do about, okay, here's what all the requirements are. Here's what we do now, where do we have gaps? And then it also was a fairly continuous experience working with your teams and other people in the Government of Canada, especially the security teams, talking about, well, okay, these requirements, what does this mean to you? And or this requirement looks like it's been written for like an on-prem system, which we are not. Will this suffice? And so there was lots of those conversations and lots of exploration continuously all through the summer into the fall to make sure that we were building things the right way. And then again, that is the best kind of relationship to have. Again, it's not customer vendor; it's very much partners.
Sounds like it.
In success, right? Because we found that they were still thinking about some of these things, especially on the security side. They were thinking, oh, here's what it is, but we haven't actually ever put this in practice in theory. It's all been theory, so here's how we want to see it implemented. And so we worked with
And again, I'll just interject here, not from the perspective of the Canada School, but from the perspective of the Government of Canada.
Right.
So this was the first Government of Canada-wide SaaS contract, first Government of Canada-wide cloud product, and like you mentioned, things like security, things like payment schedules, things like accessibility, a lot of those, well, all of them were based on kind of, well, we're going to buy something from a vendor, and it's going to be on our site, on our network, and so all the rules are geared to kind of be anti-cloud or anti-SaaS.
Right.
And so this was like the first time that we went through this as a Government of Canada, and so you guys on the vendor side and us on the kind of the client side, we were pathfinders for the people that will come after. And the next department, whether it's Human Resources Canada or Transport Canada,
that much easier,
or Service Canada, when they start doing kind of cloud SaaS platforms, it'll be a lot easier for them because they'll say, yeah, here's what we did on the security side.
Yeah.
Here's what we did on the accessibility side. Here's how we get around or incorporate this or that feature.
Yeah, no, that was brilliant. And so, obviously we had some technical challenges where we had to increase some things and do some things with sort of advanced cryptography in the way that our systems worked. We also had a lot of process changes because like protected B workloads require some level of process change and obviously having people with particular levels of certification and things like that. And then we also there were a few partners involved in the solution that we put together for Canada School Public Service, and so we also had to make sure they were also up to the standards that we had already to make sure that again around accessibility and security, so that we could have the solution work end to end really well. So it was an intense 6 months of engineering and then testing and sort of pre-launch phases through to the actual official launch on Valentine's Day. It was very fun.
And the other thing, in addition to Nick's team working hard on his side and my team working hard on my side, my job was kind of just to keep everybody, we're launching, we're not compromising. And I don't mean we're launching before we're ready, but it's just like, this is for real, like this is happening. We are turning off our old system on Friday, and we are turning on a new system on Monday. And that's a very scary thing to do in a large organization, whether it's a billing process, whether it's a registration system, whether it's a payment system. If you're turning something off on Friday and turning something entirely new on Monday, you're spending the weekend kind of sweating bricks. But we didn't. And you know why we didn't sweat the weekend was because we didn't modify. This is quite the challenge. Oh, sorry. No problem. Thank you so much.
There you go, sir.
We didn't modify anything in our platform or in your platform. Essentially what we did was we configured your platform.
Thank you, just 1 second.
Thank you. And because we didn't play with your code, we didn't say, well, you're doing this for a university and you're doing that for a grade 7 and you're doing that for a college. We're special, we're different, we're the Government of Canada. Let's go into your code and mess it all up.
Right.
We didn't do that. We just configured the system. And so there was like absolutely no reason why on Monday it wouldn't work.
You asked me a question, Todd,
Yes.
about just how AWS helped in that. One of the things that makes all of this easier is because a lot of our deployments in the cloud are all infrastructure as code. So when we could say, hey, we're going to change this so it's a more of a protected B workload, we could actually put that into instrumented code so that then it would happen automatically. No humans are messing it up or doing something different because they're configuring something else. It's all just sort of automatic, and so that made, again, more confidence, more reliability, and so it was a little less troublesome when we switched it on.
Excellent. Excellent. Wow. And that's a really big deal. Like some of the comments that both you and Nick mentioned, like it was a massive transformation, and turning it off and then turning it on, I can imagine a lot of people probably didn't sleep well that weekend. I know I wouldn't, generally speaking.
Like I said, I slept very well because we'd been running the system in the background. It had been working perfectly. We had, I think a couple of weeks before that, we had allowed our own employees on, and then I started sending out invitations to people across the government to start interfacing with the system, and it was perfect. And you know, like 10,000 people a day, it sounds like a lot in an enterprise world, like at a company level. But when you kind of go, you know, how many people are watching Netflix at a given time, how many people are on Google at a given time, the scale that cloud gives you is something that you stop thinking about scaling problems, because that's what cloud solves, scaling. Like Netflix and Google and Facebook and on and on and on and on, they literally could not do what they do if they were using old tech, on-prem, etc. They could still do it, but they couldn't do it across the globe instantly the way they do it now.
Amazing. So Nick, you mentioned that there's a lot of aspects that you need to consider, considering you're working with the Government of Canada, such as accessibility, language, security standards. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure.
Like how big of a challenge was it? And just in general, like if you could tell us about, was it a new way of thinking for D2L? If you could just talk a little bit about that.
Not necessarily a new way of thinking. We always, pride ourselves in being leaders in accessibility and learning and universal design for learning. That's always been something that we felt really strongly about, even from the first days, because we want everyone to have an equal opportunity to learn and educate themselves. And so there was, as we talked about before, were things that were slightly different or nuanced in the way that we always try to exceed the legislative bar, right? Everybody can attain the legislative bar, and they must. We're always like, okay, but that doesn't necessarily make it usable to the way that you might need. And so there's been lots of conversations about, okay, well, this is what we're doing next, right? We're thinking about this and this usability change. Is that going to meet the need? Yes, it is. Great, fantastic. So again, a lot of conversations, but nothing that was really, really mind-blowingly different. It was a great challenge, and certainly there was exciting times in when we were trying to figure out how we were going to potentially change some of our architecture to do it. But in the end, they're technical problems, and we're really good at solving those. And in the end, it serves learning. So we're happy to do it and invest in that way.
Excellent.
Kind of to our credit, the Government of Canada aspires, and in many cases is, the most accessible jurisdiction in the world. And whether that's kind of online or whether that's in our buildings, we have a long way to go in our buildings, like all kind of legacy systems. But accessibility, I think if you can look at it, from my perspective, you can look at it fundamentally in two different ways. Number one, you can view it as kind of what you talked about a moment ago, as a legislative kind of tick box exercise where you're kind of doing it grudgingly, or you can do it in a positive sense, which is like, wow, this makes our product, whatever it is, available to everybody. And accessibility is one of those interesting things, because we are all, a car accident, a stroke, a heart attack, or something else away from having accessibility issues. And so some of us have accessibilities right now, accessibility issues, whether it's with our eyesight, whether it's with mobility, et cetera, but accessibility is for everybody. And even if you are lucky enough not to kind of go through some of those kind of negative, bad, sad things that I talked about, whether you like it or not, we're all getting a little bit older every day. And as you get older, you start very naturally to have accessibility challenges with your hearing, with your eyesight, with your mobility. So again, you can either take accessibility as something that you kind of take as, yeah, I got to do it. Or you can say, oh man, I'm taking pride in the fact that my product is for everybody.
Yeah.
Very nice. Nicely said.
Yeah, well said. So what does this open up for D2L? You've worked with the government of Canada on such a large initiative. What does it open up for D2L?
Yeah, well, I guess, so it's been exciting times, and the user accounts you've been talking about, Taiki, are fantastic, and you're right around this, just the scale of it is in the cloud, it's not a concern, but it's exciting to see happen. And there's lots of opportunity. We're having lots of conversations about learning in other agencies, right? And so again, because we pride ourselves in really focusing on that engaging learning designed universally for everyone's needs, right? That really helps them be successful at what they're doing. And so yeah, we're hopeful that other people will be interested in looking at that same system and leveraging it where they can.
And Fad, Nick and I are really lucky because we both work in different ways in the learning sector. Mm-hmm. And when I was kind of growing up, learning was a period of your life. Yeah. You went to school, and at some point you were kind of done with learning. That's it. Whether that was at the end of high school or the end of university or the end of grad school or the end of college or whatever the case was. In 2022, if you're kind of done with learning, you're almost done with life. Like, you can't be somebody who says, that this is great. I'm so smart now. I'm never going to learn anything for the rest of my life. So organizations like D2L, like ours, a big part of learning now is adult education. Mm-hmm. And we, all of us, are going to be learning for the rest of our lives, whether it's formally or informally. But it's really, really important that learning for our kids, but I think even more so as adults, It's got to be engaging. It's got to be fun. It can't be a punishment. It can't be like remediation. It has to be something compelling and simple. And great platforms and great content, you put those two things together.
Magical.
That's magical.
Yeah.
Excellent. I agree that learning is definitely lifelong. It's funny when you have like your kids that are now more advanced in technology than you are, and they're just less than 5 years old. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because there's a lot of still intuitiveness. So it's interesting how young children, they expect a certain object to work a certain way, right? So we can even learn from young ones. Like, for example, my little ones will go to the TV and do this, mm-hmm. right? So
we've done, my son actually helped with some design testing of our applications, and he was holding an iPad, and if we had tested that normally with an adult, they would have held it differently. We're like, oh, their hands are too small to hit the button because the device is so big.
Interesting.
And we tested with kids, and we're like, oh, yeah, that's a great design thing because it's built for them, right? So like, okay, we should change that.
When one of my daughters was, 7 or 8 or something, we were at a cottage where they had a landline, and somebody passed her the landline because her grandmother or grandfather was on the phone. She's like, how do you turn this on? It's like, where's the on button? Where's the off button?
Yeah, wow.
And you're like, no, just talk into it. It's like, why? What? I got to turn it on. How do I turn it on?
So I've got to ask you guys this question because I'm really curious to learn. What was the biggest challenge from your perspective, Taiki? And then the same question for you, Nick. What was the biggest challenge from your perspective in implementing Brightspace or this particular collaboration that had such great results? What was the biggest challenge?
Maybe I'll start, because for me, my challenges weren't kind of on the procurement forward implementation side. They were actually before that. They were actually getting my team to kind of realize that what we had wasn't good enough.
Oh, interesting.
They kept saying, it's one of the most modern systems in the government. All our data is here. We know the system. We know how to use it. And yet, every time I would ask them to modify a page or take a course off or add something to a course, it would be like, yeah, okay, we'll be ready in 3 weeks. We got to take it down, modify it, reprogram it, put it back up. And I kept saying, well, how can it be this great system if it's so hard to use and you got to take things down and it goes down for service and maintenance all the time? So my challenge was really on the kind of getting people in my organization, this was a few years ago, not now, to kind of adopt a mindset of our system can't be good enough. Our system has to be amazing.
I like that. I like that motto.
For us, since it was a reasonably big change. It was cross-functional. All groups had to do something different as a consequence of it, right? So whether it wasn't just I had to do some technology work, it was also about how we engineered the product, how we released it and supported it, right? How we actually diagnosed particular issues. If something had occurred operationally, we needed to go look at it, but there's some changes that had to happen there. So it was largely about coordinating all of those pieces to make sure everybody had the part that they needed to do, but as a whole, we were looking at it from the picture, does it solve the problem? Everybody had to sort of take a slight change in how they were approaching things, and sometimes they were big and sometimes they were little, but it definitely swept across the entire company, and everybody knew that we were doing Canada School of Public Service as a set of work. Without a doubt, to every employee. That was probably the biggest one, is change management and work.
And I've been talking a lot about kind of our customers, our students, but it's also, now that it's been kind of online for 6 months, we've also had great benefits for our instructors, for our course designers, because now they can directly go and produce the content as opposed to working with a team of IT people in the background to code something, put something up, get it. Like, it's just so easy. Like, now they work natively within the platform. And so the instructors and the teachers and the course designers are actually doing teaching and instructing and course designing, as opposed to having an intermediary of, I don't know what it was, 30, 40 tech people coding, putting things up, taking things down. So it's become self-service from the perspective of the people putting the content on as well.
Sounds like spending more time doing the thing that matters around the mission.
The core competence.
Yeah.
Wonderful, which is one of the added benefits of cloud-based technology. So, Nick, I already asked you what this opens up for D2L. I haven't asked you that question yet, Taiki. So, what does this open, now that you've adopted this particular platform, what does it open up for the school? Like, what are you going to be able to do now that you weren't able to do before?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for us, I think fundamentally what it comes down to is it has allowed us to kind of live or die based on our content. Whereas before, the content, even if we got the content right, then we kind of had to cross our fingers that the technology would allow the content to come through. Would allow, when we're broadcasting something, when somebody's taking a course, that it's not going to crash, or it's not going to show this in English and something entirely else in French because the coder forgot to cross-reference the this with the that. So that's the thing for us. The second thing, I guess, that's kind of a derivative of that, it's allowed us to be a lot more agile. Like, again, in the past, when I would look at something and I would say, oh, that's out of date, the Prime Minister isn't John Diefenbaker anymore. Can we change that? And it would be an event. Like, it would have to go down. Somebody would have to go into the catalog. Somebody would have to find the page, pull it down, other associated things. Now, if something like that, we can have it done within minutes.
Wow.
So the capacity to stay current, the capacity to correct errors in real time, the capacity to keep things evergreen. Like, if you have to program every little thing, it's going to take time. But if you are just kind of writing another slide in your PowerPoint deck, so to speak, that doesn't take time.
Excellent. Wow. So this has been a really good discussion, and I think I'm glad we're having this opportunity to share with the audience, because I think it's a massive transformation. And what makes it unique is the way this collaboration, it wasn't seen as a vendor-buyer relationship, right? It was seen as a collaboration, as a true partnership. So,
Can I just comment on that?
sure.
I'd love to get to the point where something like this isn't unique. I'd love to get to the point where this is banal and boring and routine. And I don't know about you guys, but like when I'm on an airplane, I don't like unique landings or like I want everything to be smooth and simple and routine. And so I think once somebody does it, and we've done it, then a second person will do it and a third person will do it. And you know, if you come back 3, 4, 5 years from now, hopefully people aren't even talking about stuff like this because it's so boring. Like I love boring, like the fact that if something works and is simple, that's amazing. So I don't want to make this like, you know, we did something extraordinary because that you know, to people in the audience and to people listening, it's totally achievable. You know, his organization is good, my organization is good, but at least for my organization, we're not phenomenal. Like we just picked something, we decided we were going to do it, and we did it.
Yeah, and I think being powered by the AWS cloud, by the cloud in general, is really something that enabled this level of agility and such a smooth deployment as well. With that being said, just a quick time check. I'd like to get your final words. So there's a lot of people in the audience today that are probably looking to march down this road. So any final words, Nick, on you know, for the audience members today?
So like anything, I think the starting is the key, right? There's lots of reasons not to start lots of things, and it's getting that past that inertia to actually start something, and then that opens the door to the possibilities. And you're not going to have, to your point, all the answers, and it's not going to be this incredible thing that you need to be aiming for. You just need to get to the next set of steps and have a little bit of a view what the road looks like. Because it's going to change. You're going to learn a lot in that whole journey. You're a learning organization. We're a learning organization, and you know that's how you succeed and how you make things work well and serve the purpose you set out for. So yeah, I'd say start.
Perfect.
I would. My message would be similar but slightly different, especially for those of you in the government. My message would be kind of retire legacy systems. Don't try to fix them, don't try to make them better, don't try to extend them. You're only going to get a horse and buggy that, you know, instead of running for 17 minutes, will run for 19 minutes. Retire legacy. Start modernizing, because, you know, like if you're driving a legacy car, that means your brakes aren't that good. If you're going over a legacy bridge, that means it's not engineered for kind of heavy loads. And so the faster you retire legacy, the better you're doing for your public, whether that's the Canadian public, the American public, because citizens, you know, what government does is important. And if government is running on a kind of a old, antiquated, worn out back office, not good things happen over time if that's the case.
Perfect. Words of wisdom. Thank you both so much for today's panel, for being on today's panel. The audience, myself, we all learned a lot. And with that, just a round of applause for Taiki and for Nick.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Welcome. And just before, we have a few minutes left. Are you guys open to a couple of QA questions maybe?
Sure.
Wonderful. Is there anybody in the audience that have any questions for Taiki or for Nick?
Coming with the mic. I'm coming with the mic.
Perfect.
Oh, there's no, oops. I didn't practice this part.
Straight over there.
There you go.
So my question is actually for D2L, and it's in relation to how you handle all your domains. So do you do multi-tenancy, and then you have like one single environment where, like, let's say the School of Public Service, University of Ottawa, they're all on the same thing, or is it sort of everyone has its own environment that they exist on?
Yeah, sure, I can answer that. It is, we have a couple different things. The app tier is somewhat provisioned and isolated, but it can be multi-tenant across the board. But the data layer is all isolated to individual tenants.
That's a great question too, because we now, the school, are doing multi-tenancy agreements with other departments for their specific learning needs. So I forget who we've signed up already, but well, maybe I shouldn't say them because I'm not sure which is signed up and which is about to be signed up. But different departments now are going to be using D2L for their like food inspection needs or things that the Canada School doesn't teach at all. That departments do their own in-house training. So you can see, again, because we've gone through the security, we've gone through the accessibility, we've gone through the procurement, other federal departments now can say, oh, we can jump onto this now and train, like for example, train our railway inspectors or train our food inspectors or all the things that are specific departmental learning requirements.
Well, that's fascinating. And I see we're at time here. Once again, just an applause. Thank you very much, Taiki and Nick.